This is a short video I'm doing just to show you how to start a Stihl chainsaw. When you first start a chainsaw from cold, there's several things you need to do, and these are quite important. The very first thing you do is to look and see if the chain is tight or not. If the chain is not tight, then you shouldn't start it. The other thing you should do is look around the other side and check to see whether the system that tightens up the chainsaw is actually really tight. Sometimes it's got a manual system like this, and sometimes it's just got some standard nuts and bolts, but they need to be super tight before you start the saw up. So having made sure that your saw is secure, it's also a good idea to make sure that your brake is in the on position, which is forward. That's brake off, that is brake on. So now you're ready to start your saw. You do need to make sure also that it has sufficient fuel in it for you to start it. See it in there. And also sufficient chain oil in it, which is in this compartment here. So this saw's filled up and ready to go. No problems. The next thing you do is to prime the fuel through, if you've got one. This particular saw has got a primer. It's a little squashy bulb on the side of the saw, and you push it roughly 6 times or until it's about 3/4 full of fuel. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're ready to go with that. Next thing we do is we need to get this button all the way to the bottom, which is to have the choke fully closed, or the choke fully applied, or the choke fully on, whichever you like to call it. Now you'll find when you push this button down to 1, it won't go any further. So what you have to do first, in order to get this little button all the way down to the bottom, is to pull the throttle trigger fully upwards till you can't see it anymore. See? Press this one first, pull this one up, and you've got the throttle trigger fully open. Then, keeping it fully open, bring your thumb across, and then you can bring that button all the way down to the bottom, and only then do you let go of the throttle. What you notice, what's happened there is it's turned the choke on, as you can see by this symbol here, but it's also locked the throttle fully open. At that point, you now have to pull the cord until the saw fires. How can you tell when a saw is firing? Well, when it isn't firing, it just goes rrr, 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 and as soon as it fires, it makes a sort of rim noise. And as soon as you hear that, you need to turn the choke off, otherwise you'll flood the saw. So this is pulling the saw until it fires. There you go, it fired first time. As soon as the saw makes a firing noise, you have to turn the choke off. And the way you do that is to move this little button here from the bottommost setting to the next one up. And what that does is it opens the choke again and allows you to start the saw while still keeping the throttle locked open. As soon as the saw starts to run, it's going to run quite fast, and then you have to just flip the throttle like this, and notice what happens is the on button will turn to the 1 position and the throttle lock will suddenly be released. Watch. There we go. Now the throttle lock has been released and the on button is now returned to the 1 position, and your saw is now ready to use. Just want to show you here what happens when your choke is applied inside the carburettor. So I'm going to take the back cover off the saw, like so. I'm also going to remove the air filter, like so. Have a little look inside the carburettor. Now this is the air intake, and what you can see there is the choke valve, and as I move the choke lever backwards and forwards, you can see that's the choke off or open, and that's the choke on or closed. And what happens when you close the choke is the saw sucks in neat fuel and no air, whereas with the choke open, it's allowed to suck in a mixture of fuel and air, which is what it does when it's normally running. So when you apply the choke, this is what happens: the choke closes. When you release the choke opens. So the saw has fired. Now we need to put it into the start position where the saw is now going to start and run quickly. Don't leave it long here before pulling the trigger and returning it to the run position where the saw can idle normally. Now the saw is warm, we can simply start it by putting the button from the 0 position to the 1 position and then pulling a cord. Once you've started your saw and warmed it up, you should be able to turn it on and off from 0 to 1 as many times as you like. It will only go cold again once you've left it off for about 10 minutes. It depends on how warm the day is, of course. If it's a very cold day and the saw has gone cold, then always try starting it in the 1 position first, and then if it won't start, then give it some full choke again. If, however, you give it full choke and it's still warm, you run the risk of flooding it. Flooding a saw happens when you don't notice that it is fired and you keep pulling it when the switch is on full choke. What you're doing there is just pumping lots and lots of fuel into the carburetor and into the engine. It's so flooded it won't ignite and the saw won't start. In order to solve this, you just need to put it to the 1 position, cancel everything else and keep pulling. Please remember, when using a chainsaw, don't forget to wear full safety gear, and also if you're in any doubt as to how to do things, make sure you're in the company of somebody who knows what they're doing. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoy this video.